Hello there. Big thanks to the few people who signed up to Patreon this week. Eugene Tan and Thomas Maker, welcome. When you become a member of the Patreon, you get access to the Discord, the ad-free podcast, and you get to listen to Irrational Fear straight in the Patreon app. Apple users, if you sign up through the desktop, it's better for us because Apple won't take 30% of your subscription and spend it on updating their mouse with the recharging hole at the bottom still. So please go to a browser like it's 2001 and sign up to patreon.com/irrational fear there. Link in the show notes as always. I'm recording my end of Irrational Fear on the land of the Coatecan people. Let's start the show.
The following program contains rude words like Mark Latham, blockchain, and Twitter. Irrational Fear recommends listening by immature audiences. Comedians, experts, laughing at the world as it burns down around us. This is a Rational Fear.
Tonight, Kamala Harris has been heckled at a rally over supporting Israel. She responded by saying that the war in Gaza is complicated and horrific for her campaign. And upon being released from prison in Connecticut, Steve Bannon told reporters, "It's October! Surprise!" In unrelated news, the tri-state area is suffering a shortage of collared shirts. And with polls being described as razor thin, most Americans are wondering if they can use a poll to slice open a vein and leave this election behind. It's the 30th of October, and with 7 days to go until the season finale of the United States of America, this is Irrational Fear.
This is a Rational Fear.
Hello, welcome to Irrational Fear, the podcast that takes bad news and calls it fun, much like the same way JD Vance takes Vladimir Putin and calls him Papa. I'm your host, former Quality Assurance Officer at Dominion Voting Systems, Dan Illich. Let's meet our fearmongers for tonight. He's a returning fearmonger. It's Adelaide's prodigal son who may never return after striking a rich vein of comedy in Texas. From the James Donald Forbes McCann Catamaran Plan podcast, it's James Donald Forbes McCann.
What a joy and a treasure to be here on a podcast where people know Steve Bannon wears 2 shirts. So many people.
2 shirts? That's a bit of
willingly
that's
oblivious.
the bare minimum.
Collared shirts, double collaring. I never see anyone explain it. I haven't seen a good psychological explanation. I was so happy to hear that.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. You know, your new American life seems to be going so good for you, James. How close are you to getting a catamaran?
Oh, so far. I keep finding nicer catamarans that I want. I could get a bad one at this point.
And she's been chasing her comedy dreams around the world, from Korea to Australia, and now back home in the land of the great jokes, the USA. It's Eve Ellenbogan. Eve, you used to live in Australia. Does it feel good to be back home?
It feels great. It feels, yeah, well, no, I'm totally lying. I completely miss Australia. It was a very small pond. I was a big fish. And now here I am in this Texas cesspool. But at least I have James.
There's a lot of problems with Texas.
Yeah. I have my friend James Donald Forbes McCann.
We hold hands.
We're holding hands right now, yeah.
Coming up, we'll be asking if you should cancel your Washington Post subscription and what is the best way to set a polling place on fire. But before then, let's get stuck into fear number 1.
Your fear is rational.
This week's first fear. Over the weekend, Republicans held a huge rally in Madison Square Garden in New York City, one of the most liberal cities in America. The Garden is famous for holding political rallies of all persuasions, from Republicans to Democrats to Nazis. And in many respects, the Trump rally on the weekend was kind of a mix of all of them, really. Representing Nazis, you had Stephen Miller saying that America was for Americans only, much like Hitler said Germany was for Germans. From the Republican end, you had Trump saying there's going to be mass deportations on day one. And from the Democrats, you had comedian Tony Hinchcliffe pulling an inside job by dropping jokes so bad that could potentially move a statistically significant amount of people to vote for the Democrats. James, you are good friends with Tony Hinchcliffe.
I love Tony.
Is this?
I love him.
I mean, I've worked with him too.
Yeah.
I worked with him in America at Fusion. But you are very close to him. You're often on Kill Tony.
Obviously, when I saw that at first, I thought, the mainstream media is going to use any ammunition they can, and this is going to be rough. But as it drags on, we're on now like day 3 of the news cycle of people saying Tony Hinchcliffe's jokes were bad. I think long term, the longer this story goes on, the better that is for Trump. Because the whole early on, 2016, when Trump was coming up, a big part of it was, there's this woke thing. I don't even know if we had the word political correct, whatever
we did.
word
It
they
was
were
the
using at the
beginning of
time.
it. Yeah.
But it was like, you can't say jokes, free speech in America. That's really subsided. I think the left has really reset over the last however many years to try and not seem like they're shutting down. They don't want to seem like fuddy-duddies.
Like hall monitors.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fun and it's not really in the spirit of America. But as we drag on to into the third day of people on ABC News going, these unspeakable, so-called jokes, how could he? I don't think that helps.
I mean, there were I watched the 11-minute set.
Yeah.
And I would say 75% of it was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was
some good
fine.
Eve, I think you're correct. It was fine.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay. It probably would have crushed at the mothership. I don't know. People say that it bombed in the room. I don't think it bombed in the room. But the people who are most upset, obviously, are Puerto Ricans. But the head of the Republican Party in Puerto Rico is the one who's demanding that Trump himself apologize. He's the one who says, I don't want a surrogate to apologize. It has to be Trump. And I think that's pretty hot. I think that's really fun.
I'm going to say this. The joke that is getting played a lot, and
Right.
is getting called into the question where he goes, there's an island of floating garbage.
Yeah, trash or whatever.
Of trash.
Yeah.
And I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Right.
Now, what I've since found out is that there is currently a huge problem in Puerto Rico of the tips overflowing. And their garbage is...
the bittens. Like
they have an infrastructural problem with garbage.
Right.
That this is a problem that's been in the news, that the garbage is flowing into the ocean from Puerto Rico.
I really want
think
you to defend this as a literal
I think it was
joke.
a reference to that.
Yes, this was an environmentalist joke, actually. It was not a
But
shitting
what's
on
being
Puerto
said
Rico.
is
right.
that obviously Puerto Rico needs more help with infrastructure because they're in this weird
Wow.
position that Australia is in with its... we too are an island known for its criminals coming here taking jobs.
Wow.
And I think... It's this weird thing when you have the superpower. I'm going to get to a real issue here.
are
A real
so
issue.
full
We should
of
talk
shit.
about the real issues. How much should we take care of our own infrastructure when America is there, footing the bill for so many things?
This is correct. Puerto Rico does have a massive trash problem.
Right.
They've been asking for a $600 million grant from the government to fix it, and no one has given it
And
to
if
them.
Tony's joke is the thing that gets them that
Yes.
money, I expect the thank you.
Right.
Here is
yes,
Tony's
yes.
joke.
There's a lot going on. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there. Again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody. This isn't exactly
That's
a perfect comedy setup.
I like that. So the audience kind of jeered him, and he's like,
Yeah.
like any comedy club, and he's trying to recover.
He's going to recover.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a
pretty
miss.
funny.
I was listening to NPR.
Yeah.
NPR. I love listening to NPR.
I hate when you do your American NPR.
NPR.
Yeah.
The American listeners won't know
You're
what I'm
listening
talking about.
to Terry Gross.
Terry Gross is great because she does the interviews. She's not like
This is all things considered.
Yeah.
We'll be considering one thing.
is Donald Trump a racist?
We think so. We're not considering any other option.
So you listen to NPR, James.
And the NPR and all the lefty news that I consume so very much because that is my preferred source of news. The way they're going on about this, I don't see it as in proportion. You got to get something right because Trump was being very charming the week before. He was at McDonald's. He was doing Rogan. He was
Right.
doing little dances with everybody. It was all love. He had a 17-year-old boy take over his TikTok campaign. Do you know about this? He's got
No.
some young kid on TikTok is now running the Trump campaign.
Trump loves TikTok this
Trump
time.
loves TikTok this
Yeah.
time. Man. It's incredible how
Tried to ban
things
it
can
last
turn
time, but
around.
now he loves it. Eve,
Yeah.
you know some Puerto Ricans. How do they react to this joke?
So my family, my in-laws, my niece and nephew, they're Puerto Rican. They didn't really care. I mean, someone I know, she was just saying it's not a comedy club, it's a rally. But I don't think that it was so much like she's offended. It was more like that's why it was like explaining that's why this is the reaction to it because people aren't going in with the expectation of like all bets are off. It's like it is a political rally. You are saying the things that you're having people endorse your beliefs basically. And Tony,
progressives have done this for at least since the Bush era.
but they'll do it with like the White House press correspondents dinner where it's like there's a roast, there's a comic, whatever. I'm not saying it
Bruce
is
Springsteen comes out. I mean, cultural attachés.
right.
Yeah.
I guess it's like at a rally, you're like, these are our values.
Yeah.
And then you have Tony being like, these people are
Trash.
garbage. Yeah. But I mean, at the same time,
He was
it's like,
doing a bit. You'll get him on
he
the
was
next
doing
one.
a bit, and they booked him, and they read his whatever
I do
speech,
prefer
his
the
jokes.
Australian method of doing it,
Right.
which is no razzle dazzle whatsoever. We briefly had Kevin Rudd for a moment where we thought, let's inject a little charisma politics
Yeah.
into it, and we realised that was a huge mistake, and we didn't want to do it again. Politics should be either two men in suits or one woman as well in something that looks very much like a suit, and they should be discussing whether the interest rate should be this or half a point lower, and that's it. That's
Right.
where I'm comfortable.
Is that really
Yeah.
what you think?
Oh, yeah, I love
No, because
tax policy.
you-
What about the debt? No one talks about that here.
But you love Trump, and you always say he's a great performer, and I'm
Eve
like,
saying the quiet part loud.
oh, I didn't know that you were
no,
confessing to
look,
me.
I do.
For the listeners here, we have to articulate that
Right.
James Donald Forbes McCann is a very conservative gentleman
Yeah.
from the conservative end of
Hates
politics.
women,
Devout
hates
Catholic.
Jews.
Love women
Loves
and
Jesus,
Jews.
loves
I
the
love our
conservatives.
Lord. I will say
Oh,
Trump,
Lord.
this
Yeah.
is not getting as much
So-
media coverage,
right.
I think. Trump has really walked back his abortion line.
But for now, until he gets in the office.
Well, he didn't do anything. He put judges in that the Federalist Society insisted he put in when he was in office.
Right.
And then to win evangelicals and conservative Catholics, he tried to lay claim for Roe v. Wade coming down. But really, the president does not have oversight over the judicial
I mean, unless
decisions.
yes and no.
Unless you stack the courts, in which
course.
case it's all done. It's
Unless
all done
you-
and dusted,
As
right?
well they should. It's
in
independent
theory,
after that point.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
such a that's far too naive
We
for
disagree
you.
about the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
Well, look,
even though-
Yeah.
let's talk about hypocrisy because, Trump loves abortion, but also is the father of IVF. So he's trying to kill babies and he's trying to make babies. This guy,
He
he's
has-
everything for everyone.
I don't want to be the first to say it, but I don't think he has any real values. You know?
No, you don't mean that. He definitely has at least a pagan commitment to greatness.
His only value is to himself.
He believes in extravagance.
Right? He's like himself. He's like Putin. He's like put me
It's
on a
beyond
wall on a
that.
horse.
You know, it's because if you just wanted to have a good, happy life, you wouldn't do this. I think
I don't think he's happy. I don't think he's chasing happiness. I think he's chasing immortality. It's like Voldemort.
Oh yeah, he's chasing he's chasing his ego totally.
Right, for sure.
I mean, look,
I agree that there's an ego component to it.
James,
I wouldn't go so far as to say the man is not motivated by ego.
James, you are
Yes.
friends with Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yes.
How has he reacted to this so far?
I understand that he's done a show last night. The next episode of Kill Tony, people should look forward to watching that. And he did a fine job, and I think he's going to be all right. I don't think anybody can enjoy the experience. I can't imagine anyone can enjoy the experience of people online going at you in,
Right.
in this way. Nobody likes that. I'm now fortunate enough to meet many people who've been raked
this
over the hot
experience,
coals.
That's true.
the scandal.
Yeah, and soon to be you, I'm sure.
Who knows?
I hope.
James,
I
that
hope,
would be
yeah.
the best thing for your career.
It would be great.
You know, if I ever get citizenship, yes. But I am very conscious that
That's
my
true.
visa can be removed for almost nothing.
Well,
Right.
you know,
I'll
when
vouch for
Stephen
you.
Miller says
Yeah.
America is for the Americans, does that worry you?
No, Dan, I'm obviously the right kind of
he
immigrant.
means white people.
Here he is here.
The cartels are gone. The criminal migrants are gone. The gangs are gone. America is for Americans and Americans only.
I heard it nice and clear. Americans only,
Yeah.
James.
For is a difficult word there.
Does that include Australians?
Well, countries are for the people who
they're-
live in them.
Do you know
Which is
what?
not to say they can't have large
Yeah.
guests and have us, you
Yeah,
know,
as guests.
us foreigners come here as guests. But I do believe in the nation. I think you can't have democracy without the nation.
Right.
You know,
But you
can't,
believe in democracy, huh?
Sure,
For now, for now.
sometimes. I'm reading Plato's Republic at the moment, and he is brutal about democracy.
Really?
Oh, Plato hates democracy.
Jon Stewart defended him on the Daily Show,
Yeah.
which was interesting, and the rest of the set was okay. Was
I was
okay.
thinking about
fine,
that
yeah.
Jon Stewart doing that because he has a vested interest to defend Tony, right? Because the underlying principle that people then have a problem with, apart from whether or not there are a couple of jokes that didn't land, and people go, well, comedians shouldn't be involved in politics. But Jon Stewart was so
He's a political comedian.
not just a political. He was going to the Obamas. He was going to the White House. He was,
Yeah.
he was really enmeshed in there. And I think that's that odd question. I mean, the foundation of comedy is...
So do you think it's strategic that Jon Stewart defended him on The Daily Show?
Yeah, I don't think Jon Stewart can, within who he is and what his personality, where he's built his career, I don't think he can position himself saying comedians shouldn't be involved in supporting a political
But he could
candidate.
just not comment. Why comment at all?
But he's also a good man, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really what it is.
Yeah.
I think he's actually just a good guy who believes in freedom of speech.
There are some other Tony clips from that set which I really liked. I'll just play a couple, particularly around open borders.
Texas stuff is really, really crazy. We're right there by a wide open border. Where are my proud Latinos at tonight? You guys see what I mean? It's wide open. There's so many of them.
I mean, that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
That was a funny, yeah.
That was a really funny bit.
Yeah. That was pretty funny.
The schizophrenia Americans have about the open borders is very strange.
Well, you know what? Like, having lived in Australia and before that Korea, I remember I was in Korea in my 20s and they had like on the front page of the newspaper this crisis because the population was 50 million and they had 500,000 like visaed workers, including me. And they were like, 1% of our population is not Korean. Who are we? And it was like this like huge crisis in the country where they were like, are we even Korean if only 99% of us are Korean? And other countries are allowed to be like, our border is closed. It's very hard to get. Australia, so hard to get to. But in the US, it's like, if you're like, we should have a comprehensive border policy, people are like, you're a fucking bigot. You're a Nazi. And someone said that to me, an Australian friend. I was like, we do need a border. We need a better immigration reform. And he goes, well, you've been living in Texas too long. And I was like, you're not even from here. What are you talking about? But if you say anything about immigration in the US, you're a bigot.
So as a left-leaning comedian, how do you feel about the border situation?
Ship them home. Get them out.
She doesn't mean that. She's being silly.
I think
Eve is a left-leaning comedian that lives in Austin, Texas.
No, I mean, my grandparents were immigrants, blah, blah, blah. I think right now the U.S. is screwed in so many ways, not because of immigrants, just because of what's going on in the country. And I think people come here. I mean, I was living in New York before this. When I saw like people from South America or Latin America would come into Texas and then they would start busing them to New York.
This is when the New York liberals really
seriously.
started to turn.
But you know what? It was
when
kind
the
of
undocumented
genius.
dreamers started showing up in the Upper West Side.
It was kind of genius because what's his name? Governor Abbott from Texas was like, all right, well, if you think that we're so bigoted and we have all these problems, what happens when you guys in New York with your liberal politics have to deal with this? And 100,000 people were bused to New York in 1 year. And people were like, close the borders for the love of God. So it's like, if you have to deal with it yourself, and it's not like, ew, these people, it's like just people
we have
sleeping.
an infrastructure.
People sleeping in the streets,
And
homeless shelters.
It's been weird to watch that in Australia really pivot over the last, I guess, 2 or 3 years, is that we've had immigration numbers very, very high, and this is supported by the Liberal and the Labor Party and the Green. I assume everybody's, other than One Nation, everybody basically supports it because it's really good for the economy.
Yep.
And we don't have a very high birth rate.
Birth rates are terrible.
Right.
Building houses in Australia. You would think with all the land, it was easy to just bang up some domiciles and we'd be able to do that. But we can't. The regulation.
I was gonna say the
labor,
regulations,
the having bricks and mortar. And so
just
the point
get
is,
those guys to do the labor.
well,
Kidding.
No,
Jobs.
we have a very different segment.
I'm kidding.
Have you thought about moving back to Australia, running for politics?
The white-collar tech workers coming to Australia on our visas, I don't think are particularly interested in joining the construction trade.
Right.
Nor should they be. It's a difficult job and they don't pay you enough money.
Right.
What are we going to do? You've been in Australia this whole time.
Yeah.
You've just come out. I watch it from afar. I know we're talking about America, but from my homeland, I've got to know.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a plan so that it gets cheap enough that I can ever move back there? The rent is so high, it's staying high. Adelaide is more expensive to live in than New York City. I love
that
Adelaide.
true?
Yes.
James, I'm not the Prime Minister.
All
Relax.
right. I'm sorry. I'm not angry at you. I'm concerned for our nation. I don't know what's going on.
No, you are absolutely correct. Like I couldn't afford a house in Sydney. I had to buy a house in the country, which is fine. And it turns out I'm having a really nice time in the country.
I didn't know you moved to the country.
I moved to the country.
Which state are you in?
I'm in New South Wales, so a couple of
nice.
hours outside of Sydney, between Sydney and Canberra. And
Are you a Wagga Waggian?
no, I'm a Mittagongian.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's delightful there.
That would be nice if
really
we could
beautiful.
all flee to the country. If with the internet and maybe we build some high-speed rail.
That's
and
it.
Finally, we start filling up. People have to move to Broken Hill and have a nice time of that if they can.
And quite frankly, I've got a nicer podcast studio than this one here.
Wow.
So,
in
it's-
your house?
in my house, yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
God.
I know. But that's just I'm in the privilege of being able to do that.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And not many people can because all of my work is remote as a producer and a
Right.
director.
It's
and
very
a
smart.
writer
Yeah,
and a performer.
if you're working in hospitality, I mean, they can now, ideally, you being there creates jobs for hospitality people to get to move there. But it's very slow. This is my policy in my first term of office. Rural towns, beautiful country towns in Australia, we're going to have special economic zones where people don't pay income taxes to redistribute the population.
Well, but by the way, so this is the whole populism thing. Trump said the other day that if he gets elected, he won't tax tips for hospitality workers. If you make under like 150 grand, roughly, I think, you won't pay any federal income taxes. And I don't believe him, but like if I did believe him, I mean, I worked as a waitress for so long and the majority of your income comes from tips. That is a really enticing promise.
Kamala's taken that policy as well, I think. Tips will be...
Really?
Yeah, she just took the poll. It's one of the very few times they've had a little support across
And
the
that's
aisle.
why I've already voted for Kamala because of that policy. I voted
you
twice.
voted several times,
I voted
yeah.
twice this
Vote
week.
early, vote
yeah.
often.
Yeah.
By the way, just to be clear, I don't think people should just be mass supported. Just because I was making a joke and then I suddenly realized I was like, oh, I'm on a pretty left podcast, and James is being very tame. So suddenly
Am I being tame?
Well, I know who you really are.
Yeah, James, you are being very tame, but that's good. That's a good
Build
thing.
the wall, but with a big, beautiful door in it. Here's the other thing. My big allegiance is I'm a Catholic.
Yes.
Right.
And I love these beautiful Catholic Hispanics pouring into America, the United States.
Yeah.
You're lucky I don't throw you under the bus right now because I could just ruin his perspective.
I don't think I have any skeletons in the closet. Feel absolutely free.
Well, he's winking at me.
Eve.
when we were working on his podcast, what did you say about? You were like Latin American Catholics. They're not the real Catholics. They just have parade.
I never said that about my Latin American brethren.
What about Filipino Catholics? Are they real Catholics?
You know, yes.
East
course.
Timorese Catholics? Are they
The greatest of all is the East Timorese. I love. This is why I got it. This is
I'm
why
gonna
I
get a talking
abandoned
to
ugly
after-
Protestantism and
Yeah.
all its bare flaws.
What about private schoolboy Catholics from northwestern Sydney? Are they real Catholics?
Yeah.
No, actually, genuinely.
Oh,
the more
damn
I
it,
talk to them,
James!
Very uncatechized.
Oh, you've lost this guy.
No, we're all beautiful
Yeah.
people.
Under God. Yeah.
Yes.
And following the Pope.
I'm looking forward to going to Mexico. That's my current plan. is
Right.
I want to go to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And people keep all these progressive Americans, they'll all be like, let people in, it's beautiful. It's a what? And then you go, I'm thinking of driving down to Mexico. And they go, no,
It's true.
don't do that.
It's true.
It's scary. And you go, what, you just saying that the whole world was beautiful? And everyone should let it?
I know. And Mexico's gotten a little bit dangerous, and it's gotten, quote unquote, gotten.
I tell you,
dangerous.
that would have been an interesting. I don't know if you covered the Mexican election very much on this show.
No.
I believe they had 56 candidates for office successfully assassinated.
Before office, and then since they've taken office,
yeah.
more have been assassinated.
Yes, it's an issue.
Yeah, it's a real bummer, isn't it? But run by a female Jew, not to brag, but our tentacles are everywhere.
Well, last time I was in Mexico, I spent a lot of time in Mexico City, and then we went to Acapulco by bus. And I had a wonderful time in Acapulco.
When was this?
Probably 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
2018, so 5 years ago. I had a wonderful time.
6 years ago, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm not very good with maths. Like I said,
The 90s were always
Like I said,
10.
I only voted 4 times this week, so I don't know exactly how many times I've voted. But since returning from Acapulco, I've discovered that Acapulco is one of the most dangerous places in Mexico.
I know that.
But
It sounds so fun.
I had a wonderful time.
You were like Trump, just skating past bullets, whizzing past your head. No idea.
That's one of the great jokes from Tony's piece on the weekend. Let's have a listen to that.
He took it right in the ear. Unbelievable. I thought about this. I don't know if you have. Coolest place to get shot. Like if you're gonna get shot anywhere on your body, that's where you want it. Right there. Technically, he got shot in the head, depending on if you're a Democrat or a Republican. Right? If you're a Democrat, his ear was grazed. If you're a Republican, he survived a headshot.
Did you watch Trump's first rally back after being shot?
No.
It was at the RNC convention he came out with a big patch on his ear, and he was very solemn for like 10 minutes.
Right.
He was like he was doing his whisper talking thing, and then he got to talking about being shot in the ear. Everyone had been silent the whole time, and he goes, "The ear, so much blood on the ear." Doctors say it's one of the places with the most blood on the ear. You learn something new every single day. And people started he just couldn't help. He was trying to be solemn the whole time. Yeah. And even in talking about his gunshot wound, because the ear, so much blood. Wow, that's a lot of blood.
Oh, my God.
I looked around and I said, gee, that's a lot of blood.
That's a lot of blood. That's a lot of blood. Oh, my God. He has to be the most of everything, doesn't he? And
yeah.
If you're listening on the Patreon, you're about to hear us chat about the Washington Post editorial board. If you're on the free feed, you'll hear some ads, and we'll be right back.
A rational fear. It is the end of the world. You may as well laugh about it.
All right, fear number 2. The editorial board of the Washington Post said that they're not going to publish an endorsement for Kamala Harris after checking with their owner, space hobbyist, personal trainer, and government contractor Jeff Bezos, who was like, nah, let's not do that. This outraged more than 200,000 subscribers who joined their editorial staff and quit the Washington Post, which makes up approximately 8% of their subscriber base. Yesterday, Jeff Bezos wrote an article defending the decision. I couldn't read it because I had already unsubscribed from the Washington Post. At the same time, they updated the motto for the Washington Post newspaper to "Democracy dies in the basket." That's an Amazon basket joke, by the way. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Fearmongers, why did Jeff Bezos kill the editorial from the editorial board?
What I read, which has to be true because it was on Twitter, X, was that last time the Washington Post endorsed, I think it was Biden, afterwards, Microsoft got a contract that Amazon wanted because Trump, and that was when Trump was in office, that he was punishing Jeff Bezos. I mean, it doesn't even need to be true. I'm sure that's part of his thinking.
Would be happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, you've got 2 billionaires who are trying to shore up Donald Trump. You've got Elon Musk, who's trying to get money for SpaceX, but you've got Jeff Bezos, who's trying to get money for Blue Origin.
Zuckerberg is doing a very different tune this time around as well.
Yeah,
he came out and he thought Trump was cool, badass. He used the word badass.
He didn't say that. He did not say that.
He did.
Did he say badass?
Justin Timberlake. He was like, "Our president is badass."
What?
Yeah, that was right after the shooting. So he went quiet after that. But
Well, he's not even the
president.
president. He's like...
I know. I may have misquoted him.
Right.
It's very strange. It's very strange. Like when Jeff Bezos went to space and he came back down for the first time, he sprayed champagne everywhere.
My
And then he
goodness,
said, I thank every single employee of Amazon for getting me into space.
And they were like, that's why we do it. We're here for you.
It's like, that's the master plan all along, that he's been wanting to go to space, and he built this gigantic company so he could be a spaceman.
When he was in space, I prayed for a catastrophe. I genuinely did. I was like, I hope the thing died.
How would you do that to
somebody clip that, put it on the internet?
Shatner was on there with him.
Shatner's
you would have Shatner
great.
take that bullet?
No, well, he would take the bullet. He would do it if he knew Shatner's only got like a couple months.
Oh, I remember that moment so well. Shatner was talking to Bezos about how beautiful space was. He's like, the world is so beautiful. It's so incredible. It's my God. And Jeff Bezos was shushing him up so he could get some champagne.
Oh, he shushes him up. He gets the
Bezos
champagne. But then he starts talking about, we need to get back into space. Bezos says this, so we can start moving our pollution there. So we've got to protect our planet by polluting space. I mean, that's this man's thought when he goes and sees, the edge of what humanity has been through. Is he goes, can we get some pollution? Can we start polluting space?
Yeah, let's take a dump in space.
Maybe Bezos has a civic mind after all. Maybe he just wants to take Puerto Rico, put all of Puerto Rico into a spaceship and shoot it into space.
That would be a great West Side Story revamp in space.
He's like, what if I go to space and that's where we can put all the Amazon boxes? It's like you go somewhere incredible and you're like, can I just shit on this for everyone else?
There's no trade unions in space.
Yeah.
We'll get them up there.
Back to the editorial board.
The
LA Times didn't publish an editorial endorsement. Right. The daughter of the owner, Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, said that they didn't want to publish an endorsement for Kamala over the continuing genocide in Gaza.
Oh, wow.
So that was...
Because she did it. She's doing it.
She's doing it.
She's the Jew. She's head Jew. I say it as a Jew.
Eve, as a Jew, how do you feel about Kamala Harris? She's doing a good job?
Well, you guys are super in Australia. I know how you guys feel about even calling. Anyway, yeah. Like,
I'm
I know how
way
you
closer
guys-
to the orthodox leftist position on Israel.
No,
than Eve.
you're not.
Eve
You're
was saying
full
on the
of
way here, she
shit.
said, "From the river to the sea, Israel shall be free." I said, "Eve, I don't think you can say that."
Bullshit. James is messaging me at night going, I think nuke them all. No,
It's not true.
Yeah, neither of us says these things. Honestly, and this is probably where I lose most Australians, my fear is that Kamala Harris does not have enough of a preservation instinct towards Israel the way that Biden does. I don't think that what's going on is right, but I think that you got to go, all right, everybody, this is crazy, but Israel should exist. I think that she'll do whatever she thinks she should do to be reelected.
I think she's taking a very Australian approach by expressing concern. That's
Yeah.
what our government
I
does.
That's what
think-
you've got to do.
Yeah, we've
I think
expressed
she's
concern.
full of shit about Israel. I think she's full of
that's
shit
why
about the
you-
whole situation.
Eve, that's why you express concern. It's
Right,
so
you
you
don't-
don't have to
because you don't actually have to
act
be
in a
concerned.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then you can abstain from votes and don't actually have to have an opinion.
She's not fooling anybody. The super right-wing Jews are voting for Trump, the super right-wing Jews, and then the super left-wing people aren't voting for her at all. So it's like she's.
We've got 85% of Jewish Americans in the middle voting for.
I voted for her.
Yeah, I don't think
yeah.
I think people should be able to vote however they please.
Of course.
What a beautiful
But I'm
country.
just like, she should just say what she thinks, which is Jews are the enemy. And no kidding.
So do you think the Souchongs are using this as a legitimate excuse? Or
It's
are you worried
bullshit. It's all bullshit.
it's about their business interests?
Of course. Yeah, they don't give a. Nobody really cares about anything but money.
I didn't unsubscribe from the LA Times because I've never been a subscriber.
I think it's beautiful that there's shows like this, though, and I think what's been weird about this election is an endorsement from a newspaper. They're not doing it, but it's also never meant less. Like the big things
It's
to
true.
go on, the things that have boosted Trump's campaign that he's done. He did Theo Von.
Yep.
He did Rogan.
Rogan,
He
yeah.
did Andrew Schultz. I mean, these people get huge numbers.
It is
because-
wild that Kamala Harris didn't do Rogan the very next
Oh,
day.
she's got to get on there.
But maybe he doesn't want her on.
No,
No, he does. He does
Does
want
he?
her on.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's really open about
Oh
it.
And
man,
he's-
that's crazy.
basically, he
that's
said-
so short-sighted of her.
He said they did have a date for today, but
She canceled it.
no, she had to go to him. He didn't want to do it where she was, so she had to travel to him.
Of course, she should come here. That's crazy that she's not doing it. That should be her priority.
I mean, I think so. If you're running for office, this is sometimes people go when they're campaigning. You see it; they go into a weird close-off mode, and they don't want to engage. Do you remember Theresa May at that when she was running? She refused to debate, and then she lost by a huge margin. Well, she had a massively reduced majority.
It's kind of interesting. Rogan, Theo Von, these folks aren't. I mean, they are a little on the right of centre, but they have open conversations. And like particularly Theo Von, particularly Rogan, you can get on there and talk about what you want to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Like it's a great opportunity.
They're Gen X lefties.
But I don't think that
They're
she can.
progressives from the 90s, right?
Yeah, I guess
Is that
so.
unfair?
No,
I think
guess
both of them within the 90s.
Early-
Is Theo,
Oh, you mean-
is Theo Von that old?
It's hard to tell. He's sort of an
about our
ageless
age.
creature.
Does he
Yeah,
have
yeah,
a?
yeah.
Sort of like a mystical.
Is he,
He was
is
never
he
a child.
playing a character when he's doing his stuff?
I've met him a couple times, and boy, it's the same guy.
I don't think. Yeah, I think that's who he is. But I don't think that she can hang, and I don't necessarily think that you have to be able to hang to be a politician. I mean, seriously,
It is a weird demand for the
Yeah,
leaders.
it
that they be
started
a-
with George
a
W.
sweet
Bush.
hang.
Nobody before
Yeah.
that was. Yeah,
Oh,
because
no.
I remember when.
No,
George-
there's a big thing in Australia about the pub test.
Yeah, of
And,
course.
You need to be out of a beer with your prime minister.
That's what people said when George W. Bush was, running for president. They were like, I just feel like you could get a beer with him. And the left was like, why would I want to get a beer with the president? And the right was like, that's all I care about. That's it. And then he won. I think that was even after he'd stolen the election from Gore, which James, don't chime in. We've talked about it. But I don't
Clarence
think that-
Thomas is a great man who makes the right call.
But I don't think that she can hang. I don't think that she knows what to say unless it's like talking points, because she's a great speaker about.
She's probably a good administrator. I've never heard she was incompetent.
This is what Trump
No,
voters
I don't
say
think she's
about her, too.
incompetent.
No.
I just don't think that she's a good hang. I think that she's like,
Yeah.
let's get to the point. She's such a woman.
Well, and then in Australia, this was a big difficulty when Julia came to power. And Julia Gillard was apparently like behind the scenes. She was getting everything that was getting done in Kevin Rudd's administration.
Yep.
She was doing the paperwork. She was working
Right.
very, very hard. And Kevin was a great camera guy. I mean, in
Right.
terms of facing the public, no one was better. But
Yep.
Julia, people,
Narcissists make great front people.
Yes. But also, she's
I
like
would never invoke the ire of Kevin Rudd. I don't want him to destroy me. He still has power.
Oh, that's okay. We're on DM basis. He's been on the podcast before.
Yeah.
But it's one of those
he's
things.
been on the.
Yeah, he's been
Kevin
on this,
Rudd's been on us?
But Kevin Rudd's been on this podcast.
Wow, yeah.
I'm told overwhelmingly these people freeze up. Something about the Australian persona. Usually, like Bill Shorten, everybody said if you got him off mic, he was the most normal, ochre.
I think we've
dude.
had like inexperienced politicians, and they're great. They're wonderful because, like, particularly at independents, they talk naturally. They talk about the issues, and they talk from their heart and their head. They do it. Right. When you get someone like Adam Band has been on a few times. Adam, to his credit, talks about the issues, but he's pretending, like, it's not a podcast. He pretends he's on 2GB, and it's like just talking points. So it can be a little hard
You'd be terrified
for him to adjust to the context of what the podcast is.
But this is what I think Kamala Harris is like. I don't think that she can just be like, I don't know. I think this and this. I think she's like, I am the daughter of the, and when I was a child, and it's like, bro, like, just
that's the media training coming at it. That's the narrative.
Well, it's also she's a prosecutor. She's a person of color. She worked her way up. And, it's like, I'm sure that she's on the ball all the time, can't lose focus. And then you try to put them in a different situation.
This is what was magic about Obama. Obama could really pivot.
He was a hang. But that's because he was like a community organizer, went door to door, had to connect with people.
Yeah.
And then, I met him before he was, no big deal.
Is that true?
I did, a picture of us. I met him a couple of days before he was elected. I went door to door for him, and I got a press pass and got to get to the front of the thing. And we had a moment. We did. There's a photo of it.
I've been into it. This half shake his hand.
I mean, I don't know. He didn't mention
everyone
you.
gets to meet Obama except me?
Well, you should.
I met Tony Abbott. That was nice.
I'm shocked.
Did you meet George Pell?
Yep.
I never got to meet George Pell.
Oh my
James,
God.
you're sad you never got to meet George
Even
Pell.
I wouldn't make that joke. You
Obviously
disgusting
innocent man, George Pell.
Disgusting.
Full high
James.
court decision backing.
Edit
There
this
is a
out.
high
Edit it
likelihood
out.
that an innocent man is in prison, George Pell.
In all probability, George Pell was
Is
not
a
an innocent
fucking
man.
pedophile. Yeah.
He is.
What?
Read the case. I'm not saying he didn't do other things. I wouldn't know about other things, but that case, that was an absurd witch hunt moment. I'll have all the Patreon people hate me. I don't care. Read anything into that case. It does not add up. It was not a good case.
I should point out, anytime we have James Forbes McCann on, I lose about 5 Patreon supporters.
Do you really?
I'm sorry. I'll post this and I'll try and get a couple to balance it out.
This is the sacrifice I make to be
I'll try and build
man.
it up for you. I apologize.
Yeah.
No, you're not as bad as Joe Hildebrand. When we had Joe Hildebrand on, we lost about 30.
Really? I don't know who that is.
Joe's still around?
He's still around. He's like the editor-at-large of the Daily Telegraph.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, we had him on.
Someone's got to do it.
There was a point when the Daily Telegraph decided that they were actually going to be for climate action for a very sparse, probably 3 months.
Yeah.
They ran a big campaign about solar panels.
Right.
And they were like, yes, we are now for climate action. I don't know why they ran this, but Joe was their spokesperson, so we had him on to talk about how is the Daily Telegraph going to embrace climate action. And I think he was a little drunk.
I like that. They got behind climate change because he was on a bender.
But that is it for Irrational Fear. Big thank you to it is. We're done. We've got to get out of here.
I thought we had a third thing. We didn't hit.
We did have a third thing, but we're out of time,
Yeah,
unfortunately. I've only paid for an hour for this room.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I will bossily tell them to pull their heads in.
What was the third thing?
Basically, there are ballot drop boxes being set on fire in
yes.
Washington and Oregon.
It's a problem.
My question is what's the best way to set a drop box on fire?
One match, wearing a mask.
Molotov cocktail.
But we are a week out from the election, right?
Yes.
We're a week out from the election,
Yeah.
and there are ballot boxes being set on fire.
This is a democracy. This happens.
This can only benefit one group. It feels like a very strange sort of... America is fucked up with its electoral system. Just quickly,
Oh, boy.
the idea that you all vote and then all the votes go to a state and the state
Yes.
gets to decide, a group of people who sit around a table get to decide, oh, well, I guess that person has more votes. I guess we'll honour that and say that that person has won the election is bizarre. And it's also weird that the media has this really weird, outsized role in deciding on who wins the election as well. They get to literally call the election, hence the term calling the election.
Yeah.
I will not hear this criticism of my country.
It is so... Why don't
Eve,
you...
it's a terrible system.
In Australia,
It's horrible. It's
in
a terrible
Australia,
system.
we've got like 1,000 nerds. They
Independent.
count up the ballots.
Yeah.
They tell you who won, and then those people are in charge.
We just go by our feeling here.
That's,
you know?
that's exactly how it works. It is.
Yeah.
It's literally gut feeling.
Consider getting a king. Someone to oversee this outside the political system.
And it should be you.
It should be Shaq. They love Shaq here.
He's very tall.
My
He's very
goodness.
authoritative.
Yeah,
There's 50,000 advertisements for everything. I'm sorry, we're out of time.
I'm down with him, yeah.
That is it for Irrational Fear. Big thank you to our guests, Eve Ellenbogan and James Forbes McCann. Let's get our plugs underway. Eve, what would you like to plug?
I guess just my Instagram, Eve Elbow. That's it. Eve Elbow.
Easy. James.
And I'd like to plug you because you were one of the first people to really get behind and support the James Donald Forbes McCann Catamaran plan. It really moved me, and it helped me to keep going. And I wanted to thank you for doing that.
Well, let me plug you because the James Donald Forbes McCann Catamaran Plan is an exquisite podcast because it taps into your ego and your id at the same time. And the way...
The censor doesn't get it for hearing?
What's that?
The censor, the third
The
party.
superego
No.
it takes no part in there.
But because the way you construct it, you get quite vulnerable on there and then you chuck a bunch of sound effects in and it's like, it's quite enjoyable.
It's a great podcast.
Dan, I really appreciate that, and I love what you're doing.
All right,
this
big
is
thank
great.
you to
Thank you.
Big thank you to Just Push Record in Austin, Texas for having us, who also use the wonderful Australian Rode mics, which we use back home.
Are these Australian?
Rode is Australian,
I
yep.
did not know
And-
Know that?
There you go. And big thank you to our Patreon supporters. And thank you to Jacob Round on the Teppanyaki timeline. This podcast has been not a Real Media Company production. Until next week, there's always something to be scared of. Well, not for me, because I'll be back in Australia, far away from the United States. Good night.